On September 15, 2012, 31-year-old outdoor enthusiast Thomas Seabold set out alone on an expedition into the gates of the Arctic National Park in Alaska. 2 months later, he mysteriously vanished. On November 11th, a search team discovered a damaged campsite halfway up a mountain within the park, believed to have belonged to Thomas. Among the wreckage, they found his torn jeans, a camera, a phone, and a diary. Strangely, Thomas's body was never recovered. Entries in the diary and photos from the camera suggested that he had been stalked and tormented by an unknown creature. Thomas Seabold, a seasoned survival instructor from Wisconsin, was well known for his extensive wilderness expertise. With years of rigorous survival training and a lifelong passion for exploring remote, untouched landscapes, Thomas had ventured across many of the world's major mountain ranges. He could craft shelters from snow, start fires using friction, hunt with handmade tools, and survive alone in sub-zero conditions as harsh as negative 25 degrees Fahrenheit for weeks at a time. Friends often said, if anyone can survive the most extreme environments, it's Thomas. He frequently shared reflections and insights from his journeys on social media. When in areas without internet access, he relied on his journal to document his thoughts and experiences. One of his most ambitious destinations was Gates of the Arctic National Park, a vast wilderness in northwest Alaska, entirely within the Arctic Circle and bordering the Arctic Ocean. Known as the Gates of the Arctic, this park is the largest national nature reserve in the United States and the second largest forest park in the world, covering 8.47 million acres, roughly the size of Belgium. Its ecosystem remains largely untouched, earning it the reputation of being at the edge of the world. The park is home to wildlife like caribou, grizzly bears, and even local legends of Bigfoot. On November 11th, 2012, a remote outpost in northwest Alaska received notice that Thomas had missed his scheduled return flight. Authorities quickly launched a search operation focused on the area where he was last known to be. The search lasted 13 days, but the extreme conditions and massive scale of the wilderness forced the operation to be suspended for the safety of the rescue teams. Despite Thomas's survival skills, officials believed he had likely become lost in the vast forest. Alaska's unpredictable weather and unforgiving terrain posed serious risks, and the chances of recovering his body were deemed low. Still, his family refused to give up hope. Eventually, through the combined efforts of park rangers and family members, a campsite believed to be Thomas's was discovered near Chandler Lake, west of the Brooks Range. At the site, searchers found a sleeping bag and fragments of torn denim, believed to be remnants of his jeans. Nearby, they also recovered a camera, a cell phone, and his journal. As investigators reviewed the photos and diary entries, a chilling picture began to emerge. Thomas had been following a planned route toward a remote village called Kobuk, nestled in the Brooks Range and home to just 148 residents. Isolated and difficult to reach, Kobuk was to be a checkpoint on his wilderness journey, but he never arrived. Thomas spent part of his expedition in a temporary shelter known as the Cyber House, a fully equipped survival base that allowed visitors to cook, rest, and live independently in the wilderness. In his journal, he recorded moments of peace and deep appreciation for Alaska's wild beauty. September 15th. The weather is perfect this morning. Words can't capture the indescribable beauty around me. Every cloud-covered peak, every stream, every bird, even the quick, elusive animals in the forest seem to call out to me. I feel like I belong here. September 20th. Tonight, under a full moon, the sun set with a fiery red glow over the icy landscape. Dinner was wonderful. Salmon, meat, and berries. Your love and support give me strength. The people of Alaska have been incredibly kind, even though we've only just met. These serene and reflective entries abruptly ended on September 28th, when something terrifying disrupted the calm. September 28th. A monster came to my campsite tonight. It kept banging on the door. At first, I thought it might be someone from a nearby village, but as I moved closer, I heard a howl. Deep, unnatural, and horrifying. Whatever it was, it had immense strength. I felt like it could rip the cabin apart. I didn't know what to do. I hid inside all night, unable to sleep. Tomorrow morning, I'm leaving. Immediately. Following the terrifying encounter, Thomas's journal indicated he intended to travel 20 kilometers to Chandler Lake and establish a new camp there. His final journal entry, dated October 11th, hinted at growing fear and uncertainty. October 11th. I've been away from the village for several days now. My food supplies are limited, but they should last until I reach Chandler Lake. Still, something doesn't feel right. I have the unsettling feeling that I'm being followed. I don't know if it's a person or something else. At times, I hear howls, beast-like, but when I search, there's nothing there. I'm starting to feel uneasy. October 2nd, noon. I'm feeling increasingly unsettled. Deep in the forest, I came across enormous footprints, easily twice the size of my own. Nearby, I found crude shelters made from tree branches and signs of broken limbs. Were these the work of hunters? The strange, unsettling sound I've been hearing has returned, and I'm terrified. October 4th, morning. Today, I captured something remarkable and disturbing on my camera. In the distance, I spotted what at first seemed to be a bear standing upright and watching me. But it wasn't a bear. It looked more like a pitch-black humanoid figure. It was too far away to identify clearly whether man or beast, but I had the unnerving sense that it was following me. I think I need to pick up the pace and leave this area as quickly as possible. October 5th, night. Thomas finally reached the vicinity of Chandler Lake, but with daylight fading, he had no choice but to set up camp for the night. He noted in his journal that he had just enough sausage and steak left for one final meal. Hoping the mysterious creature was far behind him, he tried to settle in. At 10:30 p.m., however, he heard footsteps outside his tent. The oppressive feeling returned. "It's here again," he wrote. "The air feels heavy. I'm terrified. Can anyone save me?" Analysis of the diary and camera evidence. Based on Thomas's journal entries and footage recovered from his camera, it's highly likely that he encountered a creature resembling Bigfoot in the remote Alaskan wilderness. The first signs of trouble date back to September 15th, when Thomas arrived at the Brooks Range shelter. It's believed the scent of food he prepared there may have initially drawn the creature to his location. September 28th, night. A hungry Bigfoot is believed to have approached Thomas's cabin, likely drawn by the scent of food. The creature appeared to survey the area before attempting to break in. Realizing the imminent danger, Thomas chose to abandon the shelter the following morning. However, instead of returning to safety, he headed deeper into the wilderness, toward the more remote Chandler Lake. The reasons for this decision remain unclear. One possibility is that his scheduled return date had not yet arrived, leading him to stick to his original route. Another is that he may have mistaken the encounter for a bear attack and believed relocating would keep him safe. As he journeyed toward Chandler Lake, Thomas continued to be stalked. Bigfoot is often described in lore as a highly elusive creature, capable of silently observing humans long before they realize they're being watched. Thomas frequently reported hearing strange, untraceable sounds, heightening his fear and confusion. October 5th, night. While preparing his final meal, sausage and steak, the strong aroma may have triggered another encounter. This time, the creature is believed to have launched a direct attack on his campsite. Theories about Thomas's disappearance. One theory suggests that Thomas fell victim to a wild animal attack. Given the vast, untamed wilderness of Alaska and his thriving wildlife, it's plausible that he became disoriented and was attacked by a grizzly bear or mountain lion. These predators, particularly in times of food scarcity, are known to target campsites and humans. Despite extensive search efforts, Thomas's body has never been found, and his disappearance remains a haunting mystery. Another theory points to a more mysterious possibility, a Bigfoot encounter. Unlike bears, Bigfoot is said to remain active year-round, constantly foraging for food. This theory aligns closely with the evidence found in Thomas's recovered footage. First clip, September 28th, night. This video was captured during the same night Thomas described in his journal as being attacked. The recording contains howling sounds that don't match any known animal, such as bears or mountain lions. The creature appears to use its arms to strike and shake the makeshift shelter, suggesting humanoid strength and motion. Second clip, October 1st. In this footage, Thomas is seen deeper in the forest. Distant howls and heavy footsteps echo around him. He turns repeatedly with his camera, attempting to identify the source, but nothing visible appears in the frame. Together, these recordings support the chilling possibility that Thomas was being stalked, not by a known predator, but by something unknown and unnatural in the wilderness. One of the final videos recorded by Thomas revealed unsettling structures deep within the forest, formations made from stacked wooden stakes and branches, arranged in unnatural patterns. In several photos, a cave is visible on the edge of the woods. In one particularly eerie image, a shadowy humanoid figure, pitch black and still, appears to be staring directly at Thomas. The image is blurry when zoomed in, but its presence is unmistakable. He also captured photographs of enormous footprints scattered throughout the area. Alaska's vast and hauntingly beautiful wilderness has long drawn adventurers, hunters, and campers seeking solitude and challenge, but it's also notorious for unexplained disappearances. Every year, hundreds of people vanish in the state's forested national parks, many never found, leaving behind no trace. To some, venturing into such isolation may seem reckless, but for others, it reflects a deeply rooted human drive to explore the unknown. Tragically, that pursuit often ends in mystery, or worse. In his final diary entry, Thomas wrote, "The familiar howling has started again outside. This time, there's more than one of them. I feel so cold. I hope that once I fall asleep, I never wake up again." On August 10th, 2018, a team of researchers studying marmots in Washington's Olympic Mountains made a disturbing discovery: a set of human remains. The body was identified as Jacob Gray, a young man who had vanished over a year earlier. But things got stranger. When more search teams arrived the following day, they uncovered bones belonging to not one, but 3 different people. Alongside Jacob's remains, they found fragments from 2 other individuals: a cell phone, tattered clothing, and a wallet. Even more bizarre, 3 arrows were stuck upright in the ground nearby. When data was pulled from the recovered phone, it suggested something horrific. Jacob may have been hunted and killed by something massive, a possible giant humanoid. The sheriff on the case even speculated that the area might be a human dumping ground, or perhaps even a nest. Let's rewind. Jacob Gray vanished in early April 2017, a time when Northwest Washington was still gripped by freezing weather. But Jacob, a skilled mountaineer and avid surfer, wasn't one to be deterred. He grew up in Santa Cruz, California, and lived for outdoor adventure. Obsessed with the wilderness, he decided to set off into the Olympic Mountains without telling anyone. On the evening of April 4th, amid heavy rain, Jacob loaded up his gear and set out. He was on a bicycle pulling a custom trailer his father had modified. This trailer, compact and rugged, carried everything: food, camping supplies, and a composite bow with arrows, useful for hunting or protection. His target? The Hoh rainforest deep within Olympic National Park. Now, this park is unique, nestled in the northwest corner of Washington, bordered by the Pacific Ocean. It features beaches, dense forests, and snowy peaks, with climates that shift dramatically. Importantly, 96% of it is pristine wilderness, untouched since it gained protection in 1976. Jacob was lured by its wild, mysterious atmosphere. But just 2 days later, on April 6th, hikers on the Saul Duke Trail stumbled across something troubling. Jacob's gear. His bike and trailer were found tipped over, covered with a tarp. Everything was still inside. That same day, Officer John Bowie and Huo Lingen examined the scene and found a notebook identifying the owner as 22-year-old Jacob Gray. Nearby were 4 arrows, stuck straight into the earth. Here's what's weird. The bike and trailer were in perfect condition. No flat tires, no damage. Following the trail from there leads to the temperate rainforest and up into the alpine heights of Lynx Ridge. Once Jacob was declared missing, local authorities acted fast. The next day, 30 officers and K-9 units combed the area. Jacob's parents arrived quickly, putting up missing person posters at trailheads and rest stops, hoping someone had seen him. But after a month of searching, no trace was found. Then, over a year later, on August 10th, 2018, a breakthrough. Researchers stumbled upon a human leg bone near Lynx Ridge and alerted the Clallam County Sheriff. Police arrived the next day, and after venturing into the forest were met with a foul stench. They discovered more bones, scraps of clothing, a phone, and a wallet. A short distance away, they located a broken post, a backpack with food and a water filter, and a collapsed tent. Again, 3 arrows were stuck upright in the ground. The items matched Jacob's gear, But according to Sheriff Will, they found more than just Jacob's remains. Some bones belonged to other humans, and even animals. The coroner confirmed that additional remains came from 2 other missing persons. Jack Maxon, a 34-year-old hunter gone missing in 2010, and Diane Bruno, a 33-year-old hiker, last seen in 2012. Jack vanished during a hunting trip, Diane while hiking alone. Jack and Diane's bones were far more decomposed, completely bleached, suggesting long exposure. The discovery site wasn't near a campsite either. It was found 11 miles from the Saul Duke Trail, in a brutally remote section of the park, 6,000 feet above sea level, a place even seasoned climbers would find hard to reach. No signs of human activity were found nearby. If someone was disposing of bodies out there, it would be like they were a ghost. There were no shelters, no caves, no hidden camp, nothing. Even more telling, Jacob's wallet, complete with cash and credit cards, was left untouched. A careful killer wouldn't do that. Wild animals? Unlikely. Jack was an experienced hunter, armed with a high-caliber rifle and machete. It's hard to believe even predators in Olympic could overpower him. And how the bones were found, grouped oddly, with leg bones and ribs together, pelvises and other fragments off to the side, doesn't match animal behavior. Then investigators found something else. A short video on Jacob's phone, just a few seconds, but chilling. It showed a black, furred creature standing upright staring at Jacob's tent. Tanya Barbara, a Bigfoot researcher, viewed the footage and said it confirmed her worst fears. Jacob may have been killed and consumed by Bigfoot. Tanya is part of a leading research team that's been investigating Bigfoot sightings since 2008 and assisting in missing persons cases in forests across America. She shared her theory with law enforcement. But even with that lead, authorities couldn't say for sure what had happened. Further digging into Jacob's phone revealed another clue. He'd tried calling 911 on the night of April 5th, but the call never connected due to bad reception. Jacob's mother, Laura, later contacted psychic Lynn May, who claimed Jacob had been fleeing for his life that night, so desperate he left his belongings behind. Lynn said Jacob had been caught and brought back. Whatever had chased him, she claimed, was not human. Despite Lynn and Tanya's statements supporting the Bigfoot theory, many questions remained. Why were Jacob's bike and trailer discovered 11 miles from his remains? Why were both sites marked with stakes or arrows? Was Jacob trying to communicate something? Based on his route, it appears Jacob was traveling southeast from the Saul Duke Trail toward Woe Campground. He likely biked in until he could go no further, then ditched the trailer and hid it with a tarp, marking it carefully. He only took what he needed: a tent, a backpack, a water filter, and his bow and arrows. He made camp somewhere secluded. That night, April 5th, Jacob heard something strange just outside his tent. It wasn't the typical rustle of wind through branches or the distant call of wildlife. This was deliberate, heavy, unsettling. Something, or someone, was out there. Fear surged through him. Alone, vulnerable, and deep in an unforgiving wilderness, Jacob made a split-second decision. He bolted. Abandoning his gear, he ran into the dark forest, desperate to escape whatever was stalking him. By morning, he managed to gather his composure enough to document what he believed had been following him. Using his phone through a small telescope, he captured footage of a massive figure, covered in dark fur, upright and silent, looming near his abandoned campsite. The creature easily dwarfed his tent, which stood just over 3 feet tall. It wasn't merely its size that unsettled Jacob. It was the way it watched, calculating, still, as if it understood. This wasn't some lumbering animal reacting to fear or instinct. It was something far more intelligent, far more territorial. It observed before it moved, and once it chose to act, it was already too late for its prey to escape. Jacob had a composite bow, arrows, survival tools, but none of it would have been enough. Against something that large, fast, and potentially predatory, his options were few. Even if he tried to fight, his chances were slim. Even if he tried to flee, he wouldn't have outrun it. Despite the eerie footage and strange findings, Jacob's parents never fully subscribed to the Bigfoot theory. They clung to more conventional explanations. His mother, Laura, believed her son may have fallen victim to a bear attack, or perhaps a deadly rock slide. Something tragic, but explainable. She told investigators that Jacob had changed after her divorce from his father, Randy. Once Cheerful and adventurous, he had become increasingly withdrawn. He left community college not long after enrolling and began working at a local rock climbing gym, seeking solace in physical challenge and solitude. Still, Jacob never stopped dreaming. He saw himself as a modern-day nomad, a soul chasing freedom across the map. The Olympic Mountains were just the beginning. His ultimate goal was to make it to Florida, where he planned to reconnect with his brother, but that journey never came to pass. Months after his disappearance, Jacob's father returned to the site where his son's remains had been found. In the thick, lonely wilderness, Randy discovered a small bone, part of Jacob's finger. Rather than handing it over to authorities, he made a deeply personal decision. He dug a small grave right there on the mountain, gently placed the bone inside, and marked the spot with a cross made from rope and wood. A memorial, a promise, a father's way of saying goodbye. Jacob wasn't the only one whose life ended on that mountain. Jack Maxim and Diane Bruno, both of whom had vanished years earlier, were also linked to that same remote stretch of forest. Their remains, scattered and sun-bleached, told no clear story. Like Jacob, they had entered the wilderness seeking solitude or challenge, but they never came out. Whatever happened to them remains locked in the silence of the trees. The Olympic Mountains, ancient, vast, and largely untouched, have always carried a certain mystique. For all our maps and satellites, there are still corners so wild, so remote, that they resist human understanding. The truth behind the disappearances of Jacob Gray, Jack Maxim, and Diane Bruno may one day come to light, but for now the answers remain buried beneath thick canopies and moss-covered stones. The mountain still holds its secrets, and it isn't ready to let them go. On October 19th, hunter Mark Strittmatter, 44, went hunting alone in Medicine Bow National Forest and mysteriously vanished. A year later, on October 23rd, 2020, a tourist exploring the area where Mark had disappeared stumbled upon his binoculars and loaded shotgun. Nearby, an unfired bullet was discovered in the Tang Pavilion. Another year passed before Hunter Chris and his nephew came to the Crow Mountains, near the park's border, for a hunting trip. There, they accidentally discovered Mark's backpack. Following this lead, search and rescue teams found his folding knife about 300 feet from the scene, along with various items like hats and gear. A human mandible was also recovered. Forensic analysis confirmed the mandible belonged to Mark Strittmatter, the hunter who had disappeared 3 years earlier. Evidence showed he had suffered a severe blow before his death. Even more baffling, his remains appeared to have been transported dozens of kilometers away to Mount Luke. On the morning of October 19, 2019, at approximately 5:30 a.m., Mark was last seen driving a white pickup truck to Medicine Bow National Forest. Surveillance footage from a convenience store captured him at 5:46 a.m., wearing a light camouflage shirt, gray trousers, a large hat, and an orange wool cover. October is a popular time for hunting and for people to go missing. But Mark didn't plan to get lost. He had a specific goal: to hunt a Sasquatch. Medicine Bow National Forest spans over 2 million acres, covering regions of Wyoming and Colorado. The climate in the park is highly unpredictable, with significant temperature differences between morning and evening. The tallest mountains rise above 12,000 feet, approximately 3,600 meters above sea level. The Cats Forest is not only rich in wildlife, but is also steeped in legend, particularly the enduring tales of the Sasquatch. Sightings of the mysterious creature have been reported continuously since the 1970s. Over the years, many park rangers have heard stories, and some even claim to have seen the creature themselves. Mark planned to hunt in an area known as Changi Campground, located deep within the heart of the park. He was well equipped, carrying a high-caliber rifle, a folding knife, binoculars, and a backpack filled with essential survival gear. It's clear that Mark had prepared thoroughly for this expedition. Mark lived with his girlfriend of 13 years, Carrie, who often accompanied him on hunting trips. Around 11 a.m. that day, Mark tried to call her, but she didn't pick up. He then sent her a text message claiming he had nearly killed a Bigfoot. Carrie, however, struggled to make sense of Mark's increasingly paranoid and eccentric behavior. She believed creatures like Bigfoot were nothing more than myths from folklore. That day, the weather forecast had warned of an approaching blizzard, Concerned for his safety, Kelly called Mark back and urged him not to continue hunting in such dangerous conditions. There was a moment of silence on the line, then Mark abruptly hung up. Kelly tried calling Mark again, but was never able to reach him. On October 20th, Kelly returned home and realized that Mark had not come back as expected. Concerned, she went to the police station to check if there had been any reports of an accident involving Mark. Unfortunately, she was the first person to report Mark missing. Local police began investigating Mark Stripmater's disappearance at approximately 3:44 p.m. that day. Instead of going home right away, Kelly drove alone to Changi Campground, the area where Mark had planned to hunt. There, she found Mark's white pickup truck parked at the junction of forest highways 801 and 803. By the time Kelly discovered the vehicle, it was already covered in a thick layer of snow. Inside, she found Mark's cell phone, wallet, cigarettes, and other personal items. The keys were located in the vehicle's mailbox, a habit Mark was known for. The only items missing were his shotgun and backpack. Kelly attempted to start the vehicle and found it to be in good working condition, with no signs of damage or malfunction. The presence of the cell phone inside the truck suggested that Mark had briefly returned to the vehicle before heading back into the forest. Following Mark's disappearance, authorities quickly launched an investigation. However, the heavy snow blanketing the mountains made search and rescue efforts extremely difficult. Despite deploying multiple search teams, the initial efforts yielded no results. It wasn't until a year later that a significant clue finally emerged. On October 23rd, 2020, a mountain climber discovered a pair of binoculars and a shotgun in the area where Mark had gone missing, about 600 meters from his vehicle. The tourist who found them informed the police about the condition of the shotgun. When recovered, the shotgun was loaded and an unfired bullet was also found nearby. According to authorities, the weapon had been fired at least once, but the final bullet remained unused. Mark's girlfriend, Kelly, confirmed that the items were indeed the same ones Mark had taken with him on the day he disappeared. Based on this discovery, police concluded that Mark had likely died. A few days later, a team of 12 civilian volunteers organized a search in the area in hopes of finding more clues or possibly Mark's remains, but came up empty-handed. It wasn't until a year later that the case finally saw a significant development. On October 16, 2022, the local police received a call from a hunter who claimed to have discovered Mark Stripmater's remains in Rock Mountain, a location nearly 17 miles from where Mark's vehicle had originally been found. According to the report, a hunter named Chris and his nephew were hunting in the Rock Mountain area when the nephew spotted a backpack on the ground. Inside were clothing and boots. Upon examining the contents, Chris found Mark Stripmater's hunting license. Police later arrived and discovered additional belongings nearby, including a human mandible, several broken ribs, and other personal items such as receipts and a folding knife. These were found within a 300-foot radius of the site. Mark's clothes were also located, but had been completely torn apart. After forensic examination, it was confirmed that the bones belonged to Mark Trick. His remains showed signs of significant trauma, but the exact cause of death could not be determined. There was no clear evidence of foul play, although investigators couldn't rule out the possibility that he had been attacked and killed by a wild animal. However, it remained unclear what kind of creature could have inflicted such extensive damage. The police later reached out to Mark's girlfriend, Kelly, hoping she might provide new and valuable information. Kelly told them that Mark had once sent her a text message claiming he had nearly captured a Bigfoot. However, since she didn't believe in such creatures, she hadn't taken the message seriously at the time. She also recalled asking Mark why he would go hunting in snowy conditions. Mark explained that Bigfoot was typically extremely cautious and avoided human contact during normal weather, but would let its guard down during snowfall, making it the best time to track it. When asked about Mark's motivation for hunting Bigfoot, Kelly revealed that Mark believed she had been stalked and harassed by the creature. He claimed that while hunting, a large, heavily built beast had followed him down the mountain, even throwing stones at him. Mark had managed to record part of the encounter on his phone. Despite being armed with a powerful weapon, Kelly said Mark had been overwhelmed by fear during the experience. At some point, he became convinced that he had been attacked, or nearly attacked by a juvenile Bigfoot. For Mark, hunting the creature may have been both an act of revenge and a way to prove himself as a skilled hunter, according to Kelly. However, Police were unable to draw any solid conclusions based on her statements. Ultimately, Mark's death was classified as an unexplained, possibly supernatural occurrence. Despite the passage of several years, controversy still surrounds the cause of his death. The most widely accepted theory is that Mark may have died from an overdose of illegal drugs. In an interview, Mark's father, Mike, expressed doubt that his son could have simply gotten lost. Mark had previously worked as a forest guide and was highly familiar with the terrain and wildlife in the park. However, Mike also acknowledged that his son had a history of drug use. At the time of the incident, Mark was under medical care and taking prescribed medication to support his recovery. Police records support this, showing that drugs used to suppress withdrawal symptoms were found in Mark's backpack. Additionally, 2 other hunters later shared a detail that added another layer to the mystery. On the day of the blizzard, 2 hunters, Jacob and Cameron, reported seeing Mark trekking up the mountain. Concerned about the hazardous conditions, they approached him and warned that hunting during a blizzard was extremely dangerous. An argument broke out between them. In the case report, Jacob noted that Mark was acting strangely, highly agitated and unusually excited, as if he had been provoked or disturbed. One theory suggests that Mark may have been abducted by a UFO. This idea draws parallels to a case from the 1970s, in which a man named Carl Higdon claimed he was abducted by aliens at a campsite in Shawnee and transported to a distant forest. Similarly, Mark's body was eventually discovered in Rock Mountain, about 27 kilometers, 17 miles, from where his truck was found. To hike that distance on foot, especially through snow-covered wilderness at an elevation of over 3,000 meters, about 10,000 feet, would take around 6 hours without rest or food, an unlikely feat under such extreme conditions. For this reason, the alien abduction theory has gained traction with some people. A third popular theory is that Mark fell victim to a legendary creature, possibly Bigfoot. The condition of his shotgun suggested he was either hunting something or defending himself at the time. However, the fact that 1 bullet remained unfired in the chamber raises the possibility that something happened before he could take another shot. Adding to the mystery, Mark's binoculars and shotgun were found far from the location of his backpack. This discrepancy has led some to speculate that he may have been attacked at Changi Campground, and his body later moved to Rock Mountain. No known North American animal has the strength or behavior to transport a human body several kilometers up a mountain to an elevation of 3,000 meters. During the extensive search operation, rescue teams came across something unusual: massive footprints leading deeper into the mountains. These prints were significantly larger than any known animal tracks in the region, sparking immediate curiosity and concern among the searchers. Despite thorough efforts to trace the origin of the footprints, no conclusive evidence linked them directly to Mark's disappearance. Nevertheless, their existence added another layer of mystery to the case and intensified speculation about what might have happened to him. Some believe these footprints could belong to an unknown creature, possibly the very Sasquatch Mark was reportedly hunting, while others considered less conventional explanations. In the aftermath of the case, famed investigator David Paulides, who specializes in mysterious disappearances in wilderness areas, became involved. Paulides, known for his Missing 411 series, which documents baffling and unsolved vanishings in national parks and forests, interviewed Mark's girlfriend, Kelly, as well as others connected to the case. Intrigued by the strange circumstances and unexplained elements surrounding Mark's disappearance, Paulides chose to include this case in his ongoing research. The inclusion helped bring wider attention to the mystery, sparking new interest and debate among enthusiasts of the unexplained. Even now, years after the incident, Mark's disappearance remains enveloped in uncertainty and unanswered questions. It is a haunting enigma, much like the bullet that was never fired from the shotgun found near his last known location. That bullet symbolizes the unresolved nature of the case. Mark never got the chance to pull the trigger or fully conclude his hunt. Meanwhile, Kelly continues to hold on to hope, waiting for some sign or answer that may never come. The hunt that began with high hopes and careful preparation ended abruptly, leaving behind a story of mystery and loss that still resonates deeply with those who knew him. On August 18, 2019, search and rescue personnel scoured Thompson Peak in California. While combing through a concealed trail, they stumbled upon a blue backpack, identified as belonging to Daniel Comans. 1 week later, approximately 6 kilometers away from that spot, A ground search team made a chilling discovery near a ravine: fractured human vertebrae and a shattered pelvis. A cell phone was also recovered near the remains. When investigators accessed the contents of the phone, a disturbing narrative began to emerge. It seemed Daniel had captured evidence of something deeply unsettling, suggesting he may have inadvertently stumbled into what appeared to be Bigfoot's lair. One particular photo on the camera added to the growing sense of horror. Daniel Coleman stood 1.75 meters, is approximately 5 feet 9 inches, and 75 kilograms, is about 165 pounds. He was born on April 12, 1985, in La Mesa, California, and spent his childhood and teenage years in Lancaster. He later graduated from the University of California, Santa Barbara. From a young age, Daniel had been obsessed with cryptids, particularly Sasquatch, and had a deep fascination with mysterious creatures. His favorite pastime as a child was sitting in front of the television, watching the Nature and Discovery channels. As an adult, Daniel became a certified emergency medical technician and served with the Blue Lake Volunteer Fire Department. Known for his infectious smile and sharp sense of humor, Daniel was an experienced backpacker and cycling enthusiast. Several months before his disappearance, he had requested a sabbatical, saying he planned to hike in the Alps. According to South Lake Volunteer Fire Department Chief Reisbag, on the morning of August 11th, 2019, Daniel posted a series of photos on Facebook. The caption read, "Just reached Thompson Peak, 9,000 feet up, enjoying a cold beer." He mentioned meeting 4 hikers from the San Francisco Bay Area and helping them reach the summit. In the photo, Daniel wears a sun hat and blue jacket, smiling and sharing snacks with others. Following his usual habit, Daniel meticulously planned his route. Shortly after that post, he called his girlfriend, Callie, assuring her he was safe and that Sapphire Lake was his next stop. That night, she received a message from his GPS device indicating he had reached the area near the lake. August 14th was the day Daniel was supposed to return home, but Callie never saw him again. When she couldn't reach him by phone, she reported his disappearance to the Trinity County Sheriff's Office. That same evening, Daniel's vehicle was found parked at the entrance of a trail leading into the mountains. By August 18th, 12 separate search and rescue teams were combing the area. A helicopter from the California Highway Patrol spotted a blue backpack lying off the main trail. It was confirmed to belong to Daniel. However, Daniel himself was still missing. The search continued until August 26th, when a breakthrough occurred. A ground team near Sapphire Lake found human skeletal remains in a dense thicket: 2 fractured vertebrae, a shattered pelvis, and bones still bearing muscle tissue and traces of blood. Forensic analysis suggested Daniel died sometime between the evening of August 11th and the early morning of August 12th. One initial theory posited that Daniel may have fallen from a cliff and been partially consumed by wild animals, and the vast distance between the backpack and the remains only deepened the mystery. Moreover, aside from a few bones and the cell phone, no other remains were found, no clothing fragments, no other body parts. If an animal had indeed scavenged the body, more evidence should have remained. Then came the phone's photo gallery, perhaps the most compelling clue. In addition to selfies and scenic shots, there were a few inexplicable images. They depicted what looked like an unknown den deep in the wilderness. Massive, uprooted trees, collapsed branches, and a damp, eerie environment. In one particularly chilling image, a hulking, brown-furred creature appeared partially obscured behind a tree. In front of it lay Daniel's backpack, seemingly discarded. Daniel's death was deeply unsettling, and the circumstances surrounding it remain unexplained. Why did he leave the main trail? What drew him to such an ominous place? How could a trained firefighter, fit and prepared, end up reduced to a handful of bones in a matter of hours? Another clue surfaced weeks later. On September 5th, a hiker named Jerry Brennan contacted the local Forest Service with a disturbing report. He claimed that on August 11th, the same day Daniel disappeared, he had been camping near South Lake when he felt watched. While preparing lunch, Jerry heard distant, human-like screams echoing through the forest. Following the noise, he reached a deep ravine. He recorded a short video at the scene. In the footage, Jerry recounts the sudden silence that followed the screams, and then, through the trees, he claims to have seen a massive humanoid creature watching him. Though far away, he was certain it was at least twice his size. The encounter lasted only seconds, but Jerry said it felt like a lifetime. He fled in panic, rolling and crawling to safety. As he left, he believed the creature let out another warning growl.
Fucking moving. That is fucking moving right there.
There was something strange about the figure Jerry Brennan claimed to have seen. It didn't move like any ordinary animal. It resembled an ape, but it was bulkier, more powerful, and walked with a deliberate presence. Jerry was sure it wasn't any known animal. Even as he stood inside the Park Service office, Jerry's body was still trembling. But when he reported this vital clue to the Forest Service, he was told he'd likely just seen a black bear standing upright. Authorities remained vague about Daniel Cummins' case. The most recent official reports simply state that he died of unknown causes, but online discussions and whispers suggest a much darker truth. According to Daniel's family, the reason he may have gotten lost was his willingness to help others, particularly a group of inexperienced hikers. After Daniel's death, a man named Robert Brand contacted Callie, Daniel's girlfriend. He claimed Daniel had assisted their team of 4 hikers while climbing that same mountain. On August 11th, Robert's group had gotten lost en route to the summit of Thompson Peak. That's when they encountered Daniel. After speaking with them, Daniel volunteered to guide the team to the top. They shared food and stories along the way. Daniel, who hadn't packed much for himself, gave away nearly all he had. Even on the descent, he continued scouting ahead to find a safe path. Robert described Daniel as incredibly generous, someone you could immediately trust, especially once they learned he was a firefighter. Before parting ways, Daniel mentioned his plan to head to Sapphire Lake, but said he'd have to take a back route due to his lack of food. When Robert's group offered to share some of theirs, Daniel politely declined, insisting that as beginners, they would need it more. From the available information, several chilling clues begin to form a picture. Northern California has long been a hotspot for Bigfoot sightings. According to Ranger Richard Destinger of California's Redwood National Park, the state has recorded over 458 Bigfoot sightings, second only to Washington. The iconic Red Mountain Bigfoot photo was also taken here. Despite occasional recognition of Bigfoot as folklore, like California's Bill 666, which proposed Bigfoot as the state's official mystery creature and cultural symbol, official agencies have consistently denied any concrete evidence of its existence. Incidents involving violent encounters or disappearances are rarely acknowledged. Jerry Brennan's terrifying account may hold the final piece in the unsettling puzzle surrounding the mysterious death of Daniel Kermis. While camping near South Lake on the night of August 11th, Jerry claimed to have heard what sounded like a human scream echoing through the trees, raw, high-pitched, and panicked. Moments later, he saw a massive bipedal figure watching him from the shadows. But what he saw didn't align with the images retrieved from Daniel's phone days later. This discrepancy has led some to a deeply chilling theory. Daniel wasn't killed by a single creature, but by multiple, possibly by a group, a family. The figure Jerry described was tall and imposing, with pitch black hair and a wide chest. In contrast, the being captured in Daniel's photos, taken shortly before his death, had lighter reddish fur and appeared smaller in build, though no less intimidating. For researchers in the field of cryptozoology, these differences weren't contradictions, they were clues. Some experts suggest that juvenile Bigfoots may have light, reddish fur, which darkens as they age. Just as a bear cub's coat might be golden and turn dark with maturity, the same may apply to these elusive creatures. If true, it supports a frightening scenario. Daniel may have stumbled into a nesting ground, a den, or a hidden sanctuary inhabited not by a single creature, but by an entire Bigfoot family. The idea isn't far-fetched when compared to other reported encounters in Northern California and the Pacific Northwest, regions long steeped in Bigfoot lore. Witnesses have often described seeing multiple creatures traveling together, an adult and 1 or 2 smaller figures nearby. These reports were dismissed for decades, but Daniel's disappearance may suggest there was truth in them all along. Earlier that same day, August 11th, Daniel had crossed paths with a group of 4 lost hikers while making his way along the Thompson Peak Trail. That detour may have sealed his fate. Sometime between leaving the group and nightfall, Daniel likely strayed off the main trail, possibly unknowingly venturing into a restricted part of the forest, untouched and wild. It's speculated he realized too late that something was watching him. Some theorize Daniel dropped his backpack deliberately. For seasoned climbers and wilderness responders, this is a known tactic. Leave gear behind to distract a predator. It's also possible he left it behind to draw whatever was following him into view, so he could photograph it, and he did. His phone later revealed a series of eerie images: an uprooted tree, claw marks in the earth, and in one final photo, a hulking shape lurking behind a thick tree trunk. A shape not human, not known, not safe. Daniel may have tried to run, camera in hand, as the forest around him erupted with low-frequency howls and movement. At some point, those howls grew louder, more coordinated, as if multiple beings were converging. The noise might have masked Daniel's footsteps or his final plea for help, but Jerry Brennan heard something that night. Scream, sudden, agonized, human, then silence. To this day, only parts of Daniel's remains have been found. His fractured vertebrae and shattered pelvis were discovered weeks later, far from where his backpack had been located. The rest of his body is still missing. Whether lost to the forest or hidden by something that didn't want to be found is a question that continues to haunt everyone who has followed the case. And for those who believe in the existence of Bigfoot, the answer may be far darker than anyone is willing to admit. What happened next is anyone's guess. The rest of Daniel's remains could still be hidden in that lair. Daniel Comins was a kind, selfless man. In life, he dedicated himself to helping others, both in his career and in the wild. After his passing, the Blue Lake Volunteer Fire Department paid tribute to his memory. His chief, Rice Bago, spoke with sadness and pride. It's hard to accept, but what we can do now is carry Daniel's legacy forward. Live well, help others. That's what he would have wanted. No one can say for certain what really happened in those remote woods, but the clues left behind, photos, screams, sightings, hint at something far stranger than a hiking accident. They suggest that Daniel Comins didn't just vanish, he may have crossed paths with something not meant to be found. On September 21st, 2016, 74-year-old hiker Peter Jackson vanished under mysterious circumstances while on a filming trip to Yosemite National Park. A year later, on October 1st, 2017, a tourist exploring the area where Peter had disappeared stumbled upon what appeared to be his climbing cane and a shotgun. The firearm was still loaded, with 2 unfired rounds remaining in the chamber. This discovery prompted authorities to reopen the search for Peter. On October 23rd, search and rescue teams operating in the remote northwest region of Baliang Canyon, deep in untouched wilderness, discovered a fractured human skull. Forensic analysis confirmed it belonged to Peter Jackson, who had suffered a strong, concentrated blow to the head before his death. What made the case stranger was the fact that Peter's backpack and his remains had been found a year apart and 14 miles from each other, suggesting they had been deliberately moved to 2 separate locations. Even more unusual, Peter's death seemed to be connected to his quest to find a mysterious mountain creature. Peter Jackson was born in 1942 and had celebrated his 74th birthday just before his disappearance. In his youth, he worked for a construction company, and after retiring, he spent many years living in Mexico. His fascination with mountain monsters stemmed from a bizarre incident decades earlier. At the time, Peter had been struggling with personal and professional difficulties and decided to take a solo trip to Yosemite National Park. During that trip, he became lost. As darkness fell, he relied solely on his camera's light to navigate his way down the mountain. At one point, he heard heavy footsteps behind him. Panicked, Peter turned around and saw a massive human-like face staring at him. After a few tense seconds, the creature vanished into the night. This eerie footage, later kept on his computer, was shown by his son John, who believed his father had encountered the legendary Bigfoot. The incident left a lasting impression on Peter and fueled his determination to prove the creature's existence. In the years that followed, he ventured into Yosemite's wild backcountry many times but never obtained definitive evidence. Peter's obsession was met with skepticism and concern from his family. Over the years, he grew increasingly withdrawn and paranoid. His relatives suspected he might be suffering from mental illness and sometimes found him absorbed in religious texts. After retirement, Peter moved permanently to Mexico, seeking solitude and a quiet life. By September 2016, Peter planned to visit his son and sell his property in the area. He intended to return to Mexico by the end of October. On September 17th, he drove his Subaru into Yosemite National Forest and sent his last known text message to his son, saying he would camp for a few nights at White Wolf Canyon Campground. and return on the 21st. John had assumed this was going to be nothing more than an ordinary camping trip, the kind they'd both taken before without incident, so he didn't think twice when Peter suggested it. But when the agreed-upon date finally came, Peter was nowhere to be found. Hours passed, and repeated calls to his phone went unanswered. At first, John thought maybe there had been a delay or some miscommunication, but as the day wore on, unease set in. Concerned for his friend's safety, he contacted the local police, who soon referred the matter to the Yosemite Park authorities. When park rangers made their way to White Wolf Camp, the spot Peter had mentioned, they immediately located his car parked neatly in its designated space. Nearby stood his familiar filming tent, set up exactly as it should be. Everything appeared in order. The campsite itself was fully equipped. The cooking area was tidy, and the bear-proof container was stocked with a generous supply of food. Inside Peter's locked car, searchers found both his iPhone and tablet placed on the passenger seat, as if he had simply stepped away for a short walk. The vehicle showed no signs of damage or tampering, and the overall scene gave the impression of someone who had planned to return soon. However, something felt off. Peter's backpack, along with other essential gear such as his water supply and camera equipment and navigation tools, was missing. This suggested he had left the site on foot, taking only what he thought he might need for a brief outing. Not far from his designated campsite, the rangers came across another tent. It was small, plain in color, and oddly isolated. Inside, the sleeping bag was neatly rolled and clearly unused, and there were no traces of food, clothing, or personal items. The surrounding ground was undisturbed. No footprints, no campfire remains, no scattered belongings. It was as if the tent had been pitched purely for show, never lived in at all. The sight only deepened the mystery surrounding Peter's disappearance. Police conducted a brief interview with John, Peter's son. John explained that on September 17th, he had received a text from his father stating he was heading to Yosemite Park to film. He knew nothing about the exact equipment Peter was carrying. Park officials also checked wilderness permit records under Peter's name, but found no evidence he had secured the required permission to be in the area. A friend of Peter's, Michael, later provided investigators with more insight. He told them that the last time they spoke, also on September 17th, Peter mentioned entering Yosemite through the east entrance and intentionally avoiding busy campsites. Peter had explained that he wanted to go somewhere completely off the grid, where there was no cell signal. Michael described Peter's navigation skills as poor, and combined with his advanced age, worried he could easily get lost in the wilderness alone. Michael suggested they go together, but Peter declined. On September 29, 2016, search and rescue teams exploring the remote eastern area near White Wolf Campground came across a blue backpack. Documents and items inside confirmed it belonged to Peter. Not far away, they found a water bottle that appeared to have been bitten, visible teeth marks still indented in the plastic. Other than that, no significant clues were recovered. A year later, on October 1st, 2017, a mountaineer traveling through the same general area discovered a pair of trekking poles and a shotgun roughly 600 meters from Peter's last known campsite. The shotgun was rusted and damaged, but still held 2 unfired rounds. Investigators noted it had been discharged previously, suggesting the final 2 bullets were never used, possibly because trouble struck too quickly. On October 23rd, a 50-person search and rescue team returned to the area for a renewed effort. While camping in dense forest northwest of White Wolf, they found a human skull. Subsequent searches uncovered more remains, including a mandible, several broken ribs, and scraps of clothing scattered within a 100-foot radius. Peter's clothes had been completely shredded. Forensic analysis revealed the body had sustained significant damage from environmental exposure and wildlife activity, though the exact cause of death could not be determined. Crucially, there was no evidence of murder. In such an isolated and rugged region, few, if any, humans could have inflicted the kind of damage found. Despite the years that had passed, debate over Peter's fate persisted. One theory suggested he had simply become lost or taken his own life. Peter's former colleague, Alan Walter, told investigators that in recent years Peter had shown signs of anxiety and depression, often talking to himself and displaying a dislike for people. John confirmed his father had previously taken sedatives, but strongly rejected the suicide theory. John emphasized that in Peter's final text message, he had clearly and unambiguously stated his intention to return on September 21st, the date they had both agreed upon weeks earlier. Peter wasn't the type to abandon his commitments, especially when it came to family. He adored his son, and if he had harbored any thoughts of ending his life, why would he have carried such carefully chosen, well-prepared survival gear? To John, that possibility made absolutely no sense. Everything about Peter's preparation suggested he intended to come back. Peter was not a novice camper. He was an experienced outdoorsman who had visited Yosemite National Park on numerous occasions. He knew the network of trails intimately, could identify the local wildlife, and understood the challenges of the terrain. For him, a few nights at a campsite was routine, an interlude before retracing his route and returning home as planned. By all reasonable expectations, Peter could have easily made it back to meet his son on September 21st, just as he had promised. And yet, the reality was far stranger. If he had simply become disoriented, how could his backpack have been found more than 20 kilometers from the spot where his remains were eventually discovered? The distance alone was difficult to reconcile with the theory of a straightforward hiking accident. One explanation proposed is that Peter may have been killed by a wild animal. The name White Wolf Campground might suggest the presence of wolves, but in reality there has been no credible evidence of wolf activity in that area for decades. The main large predators here are black bears, which are indeed frequent visitors. However, their behavior is generally opportunistic. They scavenge for food left by campers rather than stalking people. In fact, records show that there have been no fatal bear attacks in this region for many decades. This absence of predatory incidents made the wildlife theory, at least in John's view, far less convincing than it might initially sound. Furthermore, Peter was carrying a shotgun, and there were no signs of an animal breach at his campsite. His food supplies, stored securely in a bear-proof container, was untouched. Some speculate that a bear may have attacked Peter at Big Oak Flat, and then dragged his blue backpack eastward toward the camp. However, this theory falters when considering that the backpack was found intact, an unlikely condition if a bear had carried it dozens of kilometers. The third and most unsettling theory is that Peter was killed by a mysterious unidentified creature, possibly a massive ape, while searching for the so-called mountain monster. Yosemite National Forest, located in central California, spans elevations from 2,127 to 13,118 feet. Around 3.8 million visitors come to the park annually, but the vast majority never venture more than a short distance from the main tourist areas. Few enter the remote heart of the park, not only because of the difficult high-altitude terrain, but also because overnight stays in the backcountry require official permits. The park is the largest in the Sierra Nevada range and boasts extraordinary biodiversity, with an estimated 1,900 species of plants and animals, some of which may still be undiscovered. Local legends about an unknown creature have circulated since at least 1958. Witnesses describe these beings as standing between 1.8 and 2.7 meters tall, weighing around 280 kilograms, often accompanied by eerie screams and the sight of massive tree branches shaking without explanation. Yosemite is also one of the national parks with the highest number of unexplained disappearances, some of which have been linked to these alleged creatures. John believes his father's repeated trips into the mountains were an attempt to resolve a decades-old question, whether the thing he saw during a past encounter was real. Since that incident, Peter's personality had shifted dramatically. Once cheerful, he became reserved, paranoid, and deeply fascinated by the supernatural. He often had nightmares, waking in terror from visions of a giant mountain creature devouring him. Even the sheriff grew quiet when John recalled seeing that same blurred face again. Peter's disappearance and death remain unsolved. If his fate is connected to the campsite's condition, it's as though he never actually spent the night there at all. Evidence suggests he may have left camp on the evening of September 17th, perhaps drawn into the mountains by something, or fleeing from a sudden danger. Adding to the mystery, Peter's backpack and remains were found far apart, leading to speculation that he was killed near White Wolf Campground, and that his body and gear were later transported to two entirely different locations, Tree Shop and Double Rock Peak. There are no known animals in North America capable of carrying both a human body and a backpack over such distances, especially into a mountain crevice at 3,000 meters elevation. It's difficult to imagine what truly happened to Peter that night. Yosemite in September is a popular time for family trips and group activities. At 74, Peter should have been enjoying a peaceful retirement. Instead, he made what may have been the most fateful decision of his life, selling his home and venturing alone into the hazardous wilderness. After decades, he returned to California, once again stepping into the forest that had changed his life. Perhaps he believed that only here, deep in this wild and dangerous land, could he finally find peace. Hello everyone. Today's story is truly extraordinary. As I organize the details and analyze everything, it helps me clear my mind. At the same time, I can't help but feel compassion for those involved. After completing each section, I like to pause and imagine myself in the victim's shoes, considering what I would do next if I were in their position. I've encountered many unusual stories about Bigfoot, but this one genuinely gave me chills. So on the morning of September 2nd, 2010, Jonathan Jett, age 34, along with his 25-year-old girlfriend Rachel Wagner, set out for a trip to the mountains near Pemberton in British Columbia, Canada. Their plan was a 3-day adventure through the wilderness, starting at Mount Mateel and covering about 26 kilometers to Valentine Lake. After their excursion, Rachel intended to volunteer at a children's welfare center, while Jonathan was expected to head back to the United States. However, after they entered Mount Mateel on September 4th, they vanished without a trace. Authorities later discovered their Toyota sedan, which contained Jonathan's phone and camera. Records showed they had stayed overnight at a hotel in Pemberton on September 3rd. Early on September 4th, around 7:45 in the morning, they left for their camping spot. Once there, Jonathan parked the car along a forest trail at the base of Mount Mateel, about 1.2 kilometers from a nearby service station. From that point, it would have taken approximately 5 hours of hiking to reach the mountain summit. Rachel's sister, Elizabeth, became concerned when she didn't hear from Rachel that evening, which was uncharacteristic. She tried calling her sister, but received no response. By September 6th, Elizabeth reported Rachel missing to the police, prompting an immediate search. The investigators quickly found Jonathan's car parked on a small trail at the mountain's foot. Inside the vehicle, they retrieved Jonathan's phone and camera, but no sign of the couple. The phone records revealed no calls after the morning of September 4th. Although there were some work-related messages, they did not assist in solving the case. Next, investigators examined the footage from the camera. It contained numerous nature photographs, but 2 images stood out. One depicted a damaged tree, raising more questions than answers and deepening the mystery. Another photo, taken from afar, showed a bear that seemed to be following them. Additionally, 2 video clips were discovered on the camera. The first was recorded on the night of September 3rd at the hotel in Pemberton. In this footage, a humanoid figure appears near the window, lingering for several minutes before attempting to open it. The creature's features are hard to identify, but it appears to have unusually large hands. The hotel owner later confirmed this and provided another video showing Jonathan calling the police. She stated that when authorities arrived, no suspicious individuals or wild animals could be found.
Informed that you will likely be making entries from that map to where you saw.
Due to the remote location, only Jonathan and Rachel stayed at the inn that night. Interestingly, 12 years later, in 2022, the innkeeper also disappeared and remains missing. Regarding the second video, more details will be revealed later. On September 6th, the search efforts commenced, involving 3 helicopters conducting over 50 flights over Mount Martel and nearby valleys. The Royal Canadian Mounted Police, along with volunteers, searched forests, valleys, and caves, but found no trace of Jonathan or Rachel. The official search concluded in October of that year. Later, a hat thought to belong to Rachel was found, but was eventually identified as belonging to another hiker. During the search, some suspicious humanoid footprints were discovered. RCMP officer Steve Clare speculated that the couple might have become lost and trapped somewhere on the mountain. The weather around Mount Martel in September is humid, with frequent thick fog that hampers rescue efforts. Volunteers often slipped while climbing. The couple was experienced in hiking. Jonathan went climbing weekly and held a certification, while Rachel had been hiking since childhood with her parents. The park manager noted that the mountain rarely sees visitors, especially at night when temperatures drop sharply and fog is common. The terrain is easy to get lost in, especially for inexperienced hikers. Despite a 10-day search involving over 2,000 hours, no evidence of Jonathan or Rachel was uncovered. Later, Their families hired professional mountaineers to continue the search, suspecting they may have fallen off a cliff into a crevasse, but no results were found. Mount Martel, situated in Joffre Lakes Provincial Park, stands at 2,783 meters and features rolling alpine meadows and dense, largely undeveloped forests that can easily disorient hikers. Visitors usually climb during the day and descend before night to avoid cold and dangerous conditions. Climbing gear such as ropes, crampons, and ice axes are essential. According to their purchase records, Jonathan and Rachel planned to camp overnight. Jonathan bought a light green 2-person tent, while Rachel purchased 2 blue down sleeping bags, along with canned food, steak, a folding knife, and bear spray. Based on available information, several main theories about the case include: 1. Animal attack. Some suggest the couple was attacked by wildlife. However, this is unlikely since Mount Martel is home to black bears and cougars, but attacks are rare. In the past 5 years, only 3 animal attacks have been reported in British Columbia, and no one has been killed by a bear in the park's history. Black bears tend to be indifferent to humans, and even if an attack occurred, the couple had bear spray and a knife, making it improbable they were both killed by animals. Jonathan, who was tall and physically fit, was well versed in outdoor survival, likely knowing how to handle wildlife encounters. 2. Getting lost or falling. Another possibility is that they became lost or accidentally fell into a valley. While plausible, there's little evidence supporting this. Their camera and phone were found in their car, with the latest photos dated September 4th, indicating they had reached their destination, explored, and then returned to the vehicle before disappearing again. It was unusual for experienced hikers to leave behind such essential items like their camera and phone, suggesting they may have left suddenly under unexpected circumstances. Bigfoot encounter. The third theory suggests that the couple was attacked by Bigfoot. This idea arises from another video discovered on their camera. In it, the couple is seen venturing deep into the remote forest. As they scan their surroundings, Jonathan appears to realize they are being watched by an unknown creature. The sounds of branches cracking and an unfamiliar whistling follow their movements. When the camera shifts, Jonathan spots a large, dark figure staring directly at him. Although it remains still, its broad and formidable build is unmistakable. Bigfoot researcher Tom Powell once stated that Bigfoot will always notice you before you notice it. In regions where Bigfoot sightings are common, birds tend to be unusually active, as if they're warning each other of impending danger. If humans linger, Bigfoot might use intimidation tactics like whistling, breaking branches, or throwing rocks to scare them away. In extreme cases, it could attack if someone mistakenly intrudes on its territory, which is highly dangerous. Another clue comes from Kavit, a seasoned tracker on the search team. While guiding a rescue dog through the forest, the dog suddenly trembled and refused to move forward, indicating it sensed danger nearby. This detail adds to the theory. The footage from Jonathan's camera might not be directly linked, as the figure in the first video could have been a vagrant or thief, while the events in the second might be connected to their disappearance. Historically, if Bigfoot targets someone, it tends to shadow them down the mountain. Bigfoot is believed to live in groups, so Jonathan and Rachel might have been surrounded. If they panicked and got separated, the situation could have turned deadly. The last recorded stomp on Jonathan's camera was on September 4th. When police found their Toyota, his camera and phone were still inside. This suggests Jonathan returned to the vehicle at some point, but questions remain. Why did he leave the items in the car and then go back? Why didn't they just drive away immediately? One theory is that they became separated while fleeing downhill. Jonathan might have reached the car first, hurriedly unloaded some belongings, and then realized Rachel was missing. Panicked, he might have gone back to search for her and then disappeared into the mist. However, this remains speculation. The mystery surrounding Jonathan and Rachel's disappearance has yet to be solved. No clues, sightings, or remains have ever been found, as if they vanished into thin air. Their families, who knew Jonathan and Rachel were planning to marry soon after the trip, still hope for answers. Rachel, a medical student known for her kindness and compassion, volunteered in underprivileged communities in Colombia and enjoyed painting and playing piano. Jonathan was equally admirable, described by his family as honest and dependable. The trip was meant to be their pre-wedding honeymoon, but it turned into a tragic journey. 14 years later, their bodies might still be somewhere on the snowy peaks of Mount Mathia. Despite this, their families continued to post reward notices on social media, hoping for any useful leads. Many tell me to stop searching, but I cannot give up looking for my son, Jonathan's father said. I want him to come home, just like a soldier who died abroad. Parents always wish for their loved one's return, even if only their remains.